Welcome to the book of Jonah, the first of the minor prophets that we're going to go through. His time is mentioned as going back to around 800 or so, 900. I'll go to the chart that we have here that I found, and here's the link to it. And Jonah, the prophets of Israel, 810 to 790. Now, how accurate this is, I don't believe it mentions any kings in the book. So this is a summation. The biggest thing in the book that would tell us about the time is Nineveh and the Assyrian Empire. And so that is one thing we see at the time of Jonah. Now, who is Jonah? Well, Jonah was called a prophet. He's mentioned as such by Jesus in Matthew and Mark. And when we get to the end of this chapter, we'll see more about that, where Jesus mentions him. He's also called a bondman, or he calls himself a bondman of Kyrios, which sounds like it would make him a Jew. And he says the Kyrios is a creator. It's in verse 9. And then in chapter 2, verse 4, he talks about the temple, which would lead me to believe that he's from southern part of Israel, which was Judah, probably at that time. And he's going to flee by the city of Joppa, which is by Tel Aviv today, which is north west of Jerusalem, 60, 70 miles on the coast of the Mediterranean. So these are the things we find out about Jonah. Now I'll go through a little bit here and read some in the Greek, and then we'll go through the chapter. Ke ageneto logos Kyriou prosionan, ton tu amathi, legon, anastithi, ke porev thiti is Nineveh, tin polin tin megalin, ke kerikson in avti, oti anevi e kravgi tis kakias avtis pros me. And came the word of the Lord to Jonah. Now, it doesn't say how it came to Jonah, if he was sleeping in a dream or a vision or a writing, and it doesn't say. But the logos of the word of the Lord came to Jonah. Jesus is the logos. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus came to Jonah, but the word logos, the word became flesh. And he was the son of this Amathi. And saying, God said, rise up and go into Nineveh, the great city, and proclaim in her. Now, Nineveh was around for thousands of years. One of the oldest cities in the world. Is no longer a valid city. It's just a ruin in Iraq up north between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. Now, at the dating that list had of Jonah, then that would be what's called the Iron Age, or the New Assyrian Age, with Tiglath-Pileser III, Sargon, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, and Ashurbanipal, the rulers in order. And these were all people that in the Assyrian Empire attacked Israel, the northern kingdom, and sometimes even further south into Judah, going against the Pharaoh of Egypt. And so this Nineveh was a great city. Now, it might have been before these people here, right before it. But God says, rise up and go. So have we been instructed by God to rise up and go and proclaim in her, for The cry of her evils ascended to me. Pretty much the same as what God said about Sodom and Gomorrah, which didn't repent and was destroyed. Now, Jonah would have heard of Sodom and Gomorrah. He knows the story because they had the Bible. So what does Jonah do? Well, for someone to be told by God, it would be like if a person, a white person, I think it pretty much as racism comes into here because Jonah had a problem with these Ninevites. He was a Jew and they weren't. And they were probably, maybe possibly even attacking by this time up north. And that's not where he wanted to go. He didn't want anything to do with these people. We'll find out more as he says about them. So it'd be sort of like God telling a white person to go down to Jackson, Mississippi and tell the people down there that they're sinners. And, well, that wouldn't go over very big with them. You wouldn't think. And the person that was told that could very well say, well, I'm not going to do that because that's just really way too dangerous. Or you could have a black person telling him to go to someplace where there's a bunch of Hispanics who have an attitude against black people for whatever reason. We all know these racist things that were within us. We are all of a different race. So the black person cops an attitude maybe against the Latino. Then the Latino may have copped a attitude against an Asian because of something he's done. Maybe some Asians moved into the neighborhood, opened up businesses, seemed like they were doing better, taking away his business. So he cops an attitude against Asians. Then the Asians over in Asia, they could very well cop an attitude against the people from India who were Hindus, and the Asians in China were not Buddhists. So they have a problem here. Then the people in India can have a problem with the Muslims, the religion, the countries around. And then that could go even into the Middle East, where the Middle Eastern people have copped an attitude against white Europeans, and the white Europeans down in Spain could have copped an attitude against the North Africans, the Arabs of North Africa, who may have an attitude against the black people in South Africa. So I think you get what I'm talking about. And then even within the race, you see problems within the race, our religion. All these things come into consideration in our makeup. We are born a certain race and a lot of times a certain religion or a certain country. But now, if God tells you to go somewhere, then, well, Jonah was told, but what does it say? Jonah rose up to flee into Tarshish from the face of the Lord. Now, Tarshish was probably Carthage, and the seaport of Carthage on the Mediterranean, North Africa. It mentions Carthage in 1 Kings, Tarshish in 1 Kings 22:48. And Jehoshaphat prepared ships of Tarshish to go into Ophir because of the gold. And 2 Chronicles 9:21, it says, for ships belonging to the king went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram, who is up in Lebanon today. Once in 3 years, boats came from Tarshish to the king, being full of gold and silver and tusks of ivory and apes. So this would make it probably northern Africa because it was on the coast. And it mentions, we'll get down here, a man who was living at the time of Jesus wrote about Carthage. But then in Isaiah 23:1, it says, the matter of Tyre, which is up in Lebanon, and this is where the Phoenicians were, and they went all throughout the Mediterranean, even out into the ocean, and founded the city of Cadiz, and I think that's in Portugal, southern Spain. So it says, "Shriek, O boats of Carthage, for she perished, and no longer do they come from out of the land of Chittim." In Jeremiah 10:9, "Amalgamated silver from Tarshish. Gold shall come from Uphaz, and by the hand of goldsmiths they are all works of craftsmen." In Ezekiel 27:12, "Carthaginians were Ur," and I added Tyre, "merchants, because of the abundance of all your strength," and that was up north of Israel. "Silver and gold and brass and iron and tin and lead they put in your market." Now, the man that lived at the time of Jesus, Strabo, a geographer, wrote in the 17th book, section 3, verses 14-15, he talks about Carthage. He says it's a spacious place. There is where the Carthaginians had their elephant stalls. So here we see a little earlier where it talks about ivory coming from there. And then he says Carthage was founded by Dido, who brought a host of people from Tyre. So they have come up, they're Phoenicians, that come down from Lebanon. And it says each day they produced 140 finished shields, 300 swords, 500 spears, 100 missiles. For catapults, in other places, it talks about how many craftsmen were in Carthage, and they sold their goods throughout the world. So now this is the opposite direction. We'll go to a map here, and that's not the map. There it is. So Nineveh's up here in between the two rivers. It's where the Assyrians are all up in here. And our friend Jonah's down here. We're somewhere, but he goes to Joppa, which is about where that word Canaan is. That's about where Joppa is. And then he goes all the way across the Mediterranean, way over here off the map, to the city of Carthage in today Tripoli, I believe. So he rose up to flee into Tarshish, and he went down into Joppa, which was on the coast there. So now we see it's in Israel. And he found a boat proceeding to Tarshish. And he gave his fare and ascended into it to sail with them unto Tarshish from the face of the Lord. Sailors are from all over the world. They can work on boats. They know how to work the boat, so they can go all over the world under different skippers of the boats, captains of the boats, and have a mixed crew of all sorts of races. And so now he has ascended into this boat, and it says, "And the Lord, Kyrios, raised a wind upon the sea," Mediterranean, "and there became a great swell in the sea, and the boat was exposed to danger of breaking up." Now, I have had a sailboat in the past. Catalina Island was my destination. I hit out, got over there, everything was fine. Coming back, Santa Ana winds came up, and one of the worst Santa Ana winds that they ever had. And my boat was 22 foot long, and the waves are like up here, and my boat's here, and I had to go all the way up the wave, come across, and go all the way down. Boy, was I scared. The fellow I was with was a Latino, but when he got back, he was a white person with salt all encrusted all over our faces. So this is a scary place to be, in a sea that with this great swell, and the boat's exposed to danger of breaking up. Fairly similar to what happened with Paul in the boat that he was going to Rome in the Mediterranean, the same Mediterranean, and they were in danger of breaking up. Didn't have motors. And the mariners feared and yelled out each to his god. So now we have all these different men, some Greeks for the Greek gods, and some from the Etruscans in Italy before the Romans and their gods, and the Ethiopians maybe, and Egyptians, their gods, and on, all these mariners. They all had a different god. So what they did what happened to Paul's boat. They made an expulsion of the items to lighten it up because the boat won't be as deep into the sea. It could be if it's real deep in the sea, then the waves can go over it real easy. But if you get rid of everything, then the boat will raise up higher. The deck will be up high, maybe 8 or 9 feet above the sea. Otherwise, it's only a couple of feet. So you get rid of all of your goods that hopefully will help you get the boat lightened, it says here, to lighten of them. But Jonah, he went down into the hold of the boat and went to sleep and snored. The boat that Paul was on, I think it was 300 people. So there could be a lot of people in this boat, hundreds of people. Who knows? So what does he do? He goes down, finds a place to hide, and he starts snoring. Times get tough. He's going to go hide and sleep and snore. I used to do that, get into, have problems, family problems, and I just go hide and go climb in bed, put the covers over my head, and go to sleep. And verse 6, this reminded me of when I was reading this about in Matthew 8:23, where it says, "And behold, a great quaking took place on the sea," that is the Galilee, "so as to cover the boat under the waves. But he, Jesus, was sleeping. And his disciples coming forward roused him, saying, 'O Lord, save us, we perish.' Well, he did save them and calmed the sea. But similar story there. Now the result is, and the captain drew near to him, goes down, finds him down there. He said to him, 'Why do you snore?'" Underline it because that should be italics. "Why snore you? Rise up, call upon your God, that God should preserve us." Now it's theos, it's not kurios. "And in no way we should be destroyed." And each person said to his neighbor, "Come, we should cast lots, and we should know for what reason this evil is to us." And they cast the lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. Poor Jonah. And they said to him, "Report indeed. What reason is this evil to us? What is your work?" Because he's not working on the boat. "And from where have you come? And from out of what kind of place? And from out of what kind of people are you?" And he said to them, "I am a bondman of Kyrio, of the Lord." So that shows that he was, again, a Jew from Israel. "And I worship," sevome is a true word for worship, not proskenevo, which is getting down on your face, but I worship the God of the heaven. So Kyrios is the God of the heaven, and he made the sea and the dry land. This is the Creator God. "And the men feared a great fear, and said to him, 'What is this you did?' For the men knew that he was fleeing from the face of the Lord, for he reported it to them." Tells them, "I'm fleeing from the face, I'm going the opposite direction." And they said to him, "Well, what should we do to you that the sea abates from us? For the sea went forth and raised a rather great swell." And Jonah said to them, "Lift me and cast me into the sea, and the sea shall abate from you. For I know that on account of me, this great swell is upon you." So he gives himself a death sentence. Throw me into the sea and it'll abate, because it's my fault. So now he sort of has a repentance heart here, and thinking about it. And the men pressed on to turn towards the land. Well, they didn't want to throw him in right away. Well, we don't want to kill the guy, so maybe we can get to some land. They tried, but they were not able. For the sea went, and it rose up rather upon them. And what happened? They yelled out to Kyrios, the Lord, the first converts, to the Lord, the man that Jonah's running away from, or the God that Jonah's running away from. They're yelling out now to him. And they said, "By no means, O Kyrie, should you destroy us because of the soul of this man, and the blood of the just ones, us, should not be imputed against us. For you, O Lord, in which manner you want, you do. So apparently they're picking this up from Jonah, and they took Jonah and cast him into the sea, pick him up, and off he goes, kaplunk. And the sea stood from its tossing about, just as Jesus spoke to the sea to be still. And the men feared a great fear of Kyrios, so they probably wanted to know about Kyrios more. When God does something, that when these men that were with Jesus in the boat said, who is this man that even the sea obeys him? And these people are the same fear. Who is this Kyrios that the sea obeys? And they sacrificed to the Lord, and they vowed vows. Lord, I'm going to give up smoking if you save me, and things like that. There was a movie with this man who was drowning. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. He was drowning, and he wanted to get in. He started praying to God, if you get me to shore, I won't fornicate anymore. And then he got in a little bit closer, and he changed it to I won't smoke cigarettes anymore, until finally he gets ashore. Every place he goes and prays, the thing is it's less than the worst sin that he's committed. You're going to stop, to where whatever he was going to stop was no big deal. And so these men are vowing these vows, and they sacrificed the sacrifice. Probably had some live animals and killed them. That's my guess. And the Lord assigned a great kiti, a sea monster. Now, cetacean is a word that's used for whales. And so the King James translators put whale. But a whale, but the word kiti was way before the classification of the animals where the King James picked up. So they picked up kiti as it's a whale, but it was a sea monster, and it mentions this in other places. In Greek mythology, the kiti was some type of a sea monster. You can go into Greek mythology and read about it. And the Lord assigned us, whatever this was, to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the sea monster 3 days, 3 nights. So it had some type of a belly, whether it was a machine or don't know. But this was mentioned, as I mentioned before, we're going to go to it in the New Testament, where Jesus says in 12:38, then answered some of the scribes and Pharisees, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. But answering, he said to them, a generation wicked and adulterous seeks after anxiously a sign, and a sign will not be given it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. So he was called the prophet. For as Jonah was in the belly of the sea monster 3 days and 3 nights, and that's a quote, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Ninevite men will rise up in the judgment with this generation to condemn it, for they repented, there it is here, at the proclamation of Jonah, and behold, a greater than Jonah is here. Well, now it's telling you a little bit what's going to happen, but we'll find out more of what is going to happen in the next chapter. And first, we go into Jonah's prayer, chapter 2, and I hope you join us in the prayer of Jonah, find out how he's praying. Till then, God bless.